and call us to order. I'll go ahead and, well, number one, Remy Drabkin is on the phone with us. Wendy Stassen is out of town on business. I'll go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That takes us to our point in the agenda tonight that we have an invitation for public comment, and anyone that would like to speak on any topic other than a matter in litigation, quasi-judicial, land use matter, or matter scheduled for public hearing at some future date, we will give you the opportunity to speak before the council for 3 minutes. Please complete a request card prior to speaking, and I don't know if we received anything over there. Okay, anyone that would like to?
Yes.
Come up and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Connie Keys. I'm a McMinnville resident. I live at 250 Northwest Valley View Court, McMinnville. Okay.
Go ahead, Connie, have a seat and just
okay. All right.
Make yourself comfortable.
All right. I'll be brief. I'm a nurse, and I've been a resident of McMinnville for 20 years. And I come here tonight with a concern that has been a concern of mine for some time, and that is the concentration and number of dependent care facilities that our city currently has. During my responsibilities in a previous job, I worked in the command center, and I focused on staffing for regional emergencies. And it's that sensitivity to staffing that caused me a lot of concern as I looked around and could see probably 6 dependent care facilities from my home. I'm not even going to address the medical care and emergency services issues, because I think they do get attention and have gotten quite a lot of attention over the years. However, my biggest concern is for this vulnerable, helpless population of people who are totally dependent on caregivers for their basic needs. And I'm especially concerned about them in the event of a disaster. I know that when disaster strikes, you have staff who cannot stay. They have their own children, school is out, businesses can close, but the care centers, the people who need care, remain. And so I think as a city, I hope that someone is beginning to ask the question, how many of these care facilities can a community of our size reasonably and safely offer? I was brought here at the announcement of yet another one opening. I know nothing about that. I'm sure that it's a well-managed care facility. However, I think at some point we have to look at what is our capacity. And I'm hoping that, I don't know if there are guidelines somewhere that suggest the number of dependent people an individual city ought to have in order to be safe. But if they're out there, I have a feeling our community is approaching that guideline and maybe even exceeding it. I don't have any answers. I'm willing to work with people or help with an assessment, and I'm hoping that somehow at some point we can address this issue before there's yet another facility opening. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you for your support in the community, both city and county. I know you're very involved, and so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other that would like to approach the council this evening with comments? Seeing none, that'll take us to a presentation. And at the end of September, Kelly, myself, and Wendy had an opportunity to attend the League of Oregon Cities Conference in Bend. And as is custom at our annual meetings, those communities that have done a good job in safety are presented an award. And I don't know how many years we have consistently received awards, but again, this year we had an opportunity to receive a Silver Safety Award. And what that is that the injury frequency rate of 0.9, so it's not even 1%, for the 2018-2019 year, with a full-time equivalent of 317 employees. That includes water and light. We were awarded and recognized. I'll tell you, as I looked around the room, there weren't many that was less than us, and we were in the large city category. I think there were only 2 that were higher than us in the state in that large city category. So on behalf of the League of Oregon Cities and CIS, our insurance carrier, we were awarded this, and so I proudly will hand this to Jeff on behalf of our city employees, but know that department heads, chief and the other chief, especially in your line of work, safety is number 1. And I know Mike in engineering and public works, there's so much opportunities there. And Susan with a park and rec, you know, our finance area is not as vulnerable, but could be. And Scott, IT is not as vulnerable, but again, I just would do a shout out to our city making us a safe environment to work in, so thank you. I now will open us up for advice and information and reports from the councilors on committee and board assignments, and we'll start with Adam this evening. Adam?
YCOM will meet here soon for the first time in a while, and there was a little event out at the airport this last week, but contrary to what was reported in the paper, that plane actually flew out that night, and there was just one little cable on a brake caliper that had an issue, but other than that, it was pretty remarkable that it had no damage and it was able to fly out that evening. So I went out there yesterday for about an hour and spoke with some different people, and I think everybody has a better plan moving forward on where planes should go and where planes shouldn't go. And yeah, so I mean, there's definitely some issues out there that need resolved and need some funding, but we obviously have some projects coming up with some grant dollars and FFA dollars. So that's exciting. And I know the wheels of government never move fast enough for those projects, but I think the future is bright out there, and I look forward to those projects getting done.
Thank you, Adam. Sal?
Thank you, Mayor. Neither Council of Governments nor Parkway Committee have met since our last meeting. Council of Governments, at the last meeting, I mentioned that they are soliciting feedback on legislative items that cities are interested in pursuing. So I'll be reaching out to other cities in the local jurisdiction, as well as stakeholders in the community, to find out what their priorities are and try and get that lined up. In terms of constituent work, I've had a few different members of the community in the last couple of weeks, including one person who attended a 2018 council meeting where we talked about wayfinding signs downtown, who have asked me for an update on the status and design and the installation of the wayfinding signs that we were presented in 2018. And in particular, concerns have been raised about the ability of the public to find businesses in the Alpine District, including things like Mac Market. So I don't know what the status is of that. I couldn't give them a good answer. So I'd appreciate a report back at some time to council about what's happening with wayfinding signs.
Maybe we could have Heather update us on that. Okay. Kelly?
Well, I understand I'm supposed to do a report on the Affordable Housing Committee because Remy can't be here. You never know how much you lean on a fellow counselor until, let's see. Trying to think what we did discuss last time. We are definitely still looking at various forms of affordable housing. What we're particularly interested in is finding people for our committee that have a contracting background, because we need this to be able to use these folks to help us avail ourselves of some of the state funding dollars that are out there. And there's a lot of money. The problem is we don't have any land, and we probably do need a few more contractors on our committee. It's really essential. We're looking possibly, it's a McMinnville Home Builders group, not Habitat, but the other one.
EDC?
Community Home Builders. We're looking at them. We also have several positions on the committee that are open, and so we're going to be looking at possible people to fill those, basically from the business community. Unfortunately, the hospital's person was unable to attend that particular day. So that's the majority of what we discussed at the last affordable housing meeting. Can you think of anything else, Scott? I can't. Okay. And then just to point out that on the 10th, we're going to be talking about the urban renewal. We're going to be dealing with the Public Advisory Committee for that. And I think the meeting starts at around 3:30 over at the police department. And then at 4:30, the real meeting gets going. So it's going to be a fairly long session for those that want to come for the early session, which is just about an hour from 3:30 to 4:30. I recommend that you come. So that's coming up. And Visit McMinnville is still a ways out, so I'm not going to worry about that.
Thank you, Kelly. Remy, any reports from you? Not hearing that. Oh. Thank you, Remy. Zach?
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Historic Landmarks Committee, we had an interesting meeting in which First Federal presented their grand design for downtown. Long and interesting discussion. Big project downtown. It's going to really change the look. They asked for 5 waivers. There's some pretty critical stuff in there that is going to really significantly impact the downtown. The committee ended up granting them all the waivers. I had some concerns on one of the waivers that was granted might set a precedent for allowing fencing and screening downtown that I'm not sure is how it's going to play out, but I figured I'd bring that to you guys. It involved fencing, which was allowed, even small and short, but that doesn't really exist anywhere downtown, so that's going to be interesting to watch play out. In addition, I saw it had a lot of glazing and metal and fenestrations, which were pushed the boundaries of the DDRs, the downtown design regulations. I think that's right, DDRs, downtown design regulations, in a new direction with a lot of glazing. It's going to be a big glass building. One thing I saw seemed to be overlooked and missed in the staff report. The DDRs specifically state that doesn't get into a lot of colors, except for it specifically prohibits black, the color black. And the architects and the clients proposed black brick, and there was no waiver request for black. So seemed to be a fairly cardinal miss. And I know color's tough to interpret, but it seemed to me that not having it mentioned in the staff report was a little vexing. And then second, on HLC, I'm sensing from the committee, after attending many meetings, that there's I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but potentially of a training either with Heather or you on just how to work as that group. I think they end up having a lot of the same discussions on what we should be talking about and going around, that I think they could benefit from some guidance and information, and I think they'd all be receptive to that. That's my HLC update. Landscape Committee, more trees are coming down, and then Falcon Suites presented their landscape plan. That's the big Harold Washington office complex over there. Secondly was Kids on the Block Technical Advisory Committee that Nat and I are serving on. Not a lot of update, and that's kind of my question. The last thing we brought to the council was seeking a joint meeting between us and the school district, and I share an office with a school board member, and he has heard nary a tether, so I wanted to seek an update on where we're at with approaching the school district. And I know ships have launched on this year's KOB, but I didn't think that was any reason not to seek our meeting.
I had an opportunity on Saturday to be a part of the meeting on the conclusion of the construction of the high school, and many board members of the school district were there, and I made an approach to those that I was sitting with, and then we've approached Mary Alice, so that's something that we're going to do, a reach out to have a joint McMinnville School District and Council work session together by the end of the year. That's on the plate right now.
And Susan and I were back and forth on some potential dates. I'll be touching base with the superintendent's office this week.
So we will meet with them by the end of the year?
That's our hope, yes.
Okay, cool.
And I got agreement from Mary Alice and the board members. I was sitting with 3 of them that said yes, they were very excited.
Okay.
Mayor, could I ask Zach a question?
Sure.
I'm just kind of curious, when I read in the newspaper about the meeting, the historical landmarks meeting, is the screening supposed to be to hide the parking, which they're not supposed to have on 3rd Street too?
Yeah, it was, I think it was an interpretation of the...
As something that they were going to have to look at further down.
Right, and that was a weird one where it was almost delving into the landscape committee realm, which you'll probably be more familiar with, in that, hey, provide some landscape screening. Well, this was more of a fence that will get grown in somewhat, but I interpreted it, I've seen those go either way, and I've interpreted it more as a fence, and looking at the actual design and elevation, it came across as more of a picket fence that will have some green growth on it. So it was not just arborvitae or green, buffering with just plants. It was a built structure that will serve more as a fence in my interpretation.
How high is it supposed to be? Just
it's 30 or 36 inches, so it's not tall, but it's a fence downtown, and there aren't any fences. So.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And then I just wanted to report on the meeting that I had the opportunity to go on Saturday evening, a part of the conclusion of the construction of the high school, and Heather and Katie were with us, and I just want to report to the council how the report back from the contractors, design, from the workers and the school district was that the planning and engineering process that transpired at the high school was some of the best that this contractor had ever seen throughout the state of Oregon. And we're talking about a big project, one that does many, many projects. And I just wanted to share that coming back it made me feel really good as a city as we're trying to provide appropriate customer service and doing the things we need to on a big, complex build out that ran into many, many situations, and every single one of them said they'd indicated was worked out in an appropriate and timely manner. So I bring that back to the city, but specifically to the councilors, because sometimes we don't hear the good reports. Heather has taken it back to her staff, but I wanted to share that with the council. Moving to the chief, department heads. Okay, Susan?
No, thank you for all the support in the recent things that have been going on in Parks and Rec. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
No update time.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff has asked that I briefly report on some emergency management work we've been doing as an organization. For some time now, the county's had a natural hazard mitigation plan that addresses natural hazard risk and vulnerability and probability. That plan has involved most every city in the county except for us. We haven't been able to participate in the past due to staff capacity issues. That plan's updated every 5 years. The last rendition was 2014, so they're in the middle of the 2019 update. As a team, we decided to participate this time. They have the University of Oregon's Public Policy Group helping with the update, and that group has kind of gone above and beyond to help us put in place sort of the first version of that plan. The end result will be when the county's plan's updated, we'll have an independent chapter like the rest of the cities in the county do that address our natural hazards and outline some action items for us to start to mitigate risk. We've had a robust cross-departmental team at the table, as well as John Dietz and his staff, and so the plan that'll come out will be a joint plan that involves city action items as well as McMinnville Water and Light action items. It'll address a wide range of natural hazards from earthquakes to volcanoes to winter storms to you name it. The draft of that plan is expected to be compiled within the next few weeks, and then there'll be a draft distributed for public review and comment. And the Office of Emergency Management and FEMA will get their fingerprints on it as well. Ultimately, our portion of that plan will come before you probably early calendar year 2020 for formal adoption. And by having that plan created and in place, it opens up some opportunities for the city to apply for and receive grants related to mitigation. So whether it's updating floodplain maps or evaluating landslide hazards or other natural hazard risks we want to start to mitigate, by having a plan in place, it allows for some pre-disaster funds. And then certainly if there is a disaster, by having a active mitigation plan in place, it does free up some post-disaster funds as well. So stay tuned for more information on that, but I didn't have Ms. Keys prompt you on emergency management tonight, but it's a coincidence that hazard mitigation plan will have a list of critical facilities, which has a very robust list of the care centers that are in the community and where they're located. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mike. Scott?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing to bring to the council's attention, the project the ICE department's been working on for the last few months now is that we'll be replacing the phone system for half the city this month. Our cutover date's in about 2 weeks, and this includes everything on this side of the city, which is City Hall, this building, police, fire, library, and aquatic center. And we'll be replacing the old analog system with a voice over IP system, which the rest of the city's already been on for a couple of years. It's a great system, it's pretty well proven. So we're finally going to unify the city on one working voicemail and phone system. So stay tuned, and we'll be able to clean up things like this and make it easier to get phone calls in this building as well.
Thank you, Scott. David?
I'd just like to thank Elizabeth for officially taking over responsibility for municipal court functions this week. As of Monday, we have achieved separation between the court administration, judicial functions of our municipal court, which are now supervised by the finance department and Elizabeth, and the prosecution side of the shop, which is remained under city attorney, and city prosecutor it continues to answer to me. And that's been something that we've long sought to accomplish, and so appreciate Elizabeth being on board and help us to accomplish that. And then I'd also like to thank Chief Scales for deputizing me tonight. Really appreciate that.
Hopefully he doesn't carry a gun. No. Jeff?
So a couple of things. I'll let you know that Councilor Drabkin sent me a text about 30 minutes ago letting me know that the entire staff at the winery joined her in the Pledge of Allegiance at the opening of the meeting.
Good job, Remy.
A couple of items for you. Next Tuesday, we will be conducting interviews to hire a new regular full-time finance director. We're still refining some of the times and locations. We will be doing a meet and greet in the middle of the day, and we'll be inviting all of you to that. It'll be roughly around the noon hour, maybe 11:15 to 12:30 is sort of the window that we're working on, but we're still refining some of the start and end times for the activity. Next Wednesday at your work session, you'll be doing quasi-judicial functions of the council part 2. We'll be bringing John Morgan of Morgan CPS and the Shuganik Institute to town. John tells me he needs 4 hours. I've told him he can have 2. And if you want to have a chapter 3 or go 4 hours, you get to make that call that night, but we'll try to hold it to 2. So John will be here next Wednesday. We are not likely to be in this room just because of the room setup that John prefers. I don't know if we confirmed the police department briefing room yet, but there's a chance we'll be over there. We'll let you know when we send out the meeting notice later this week. Also remind you that I'll be attending the annual ICMA conference in Nashville, Tennessee from the 19th through the 23rd of this month, so I will miss your second council meeting of the month, and there's probably something else that I'm forgetting in terms of dates and times, but that's all I have for you tonight. Oh, homecoming this weekend at Linfield College.
Thank you. And Jeff, why don't you just update for those that on our town and gown, just give us a review of the activities on Friday night.
There was an awesome trivia contest. So we had about 140 people in the room, not counting the students who performed. There was a little bit of an imbalance. I've had a number of people say we need to invite more city partners. We all invited the same number. We just had more no-shows than Linfield did. So each jurisdiction had a 50-person invite list plus ones, and we just had fewer of our 50 people show up, and they had more of theirs show up. So we had a lot of enthusiasm for the folks who were there. I let you speak for yourself, but it was a robust social evening. Miles and I tap danced a little bit, but it was mostly about the engagement of the folks who were in the room, hoping to build stronger and more profound partnerships between the community and the college now and in years to come. Our hope is that it becomes a regular, probably annual event. I had at least 4 conversations with folks afterwards who are already ready for the next one and even offering to help plan it. So I would expect that probably around this time every year we'll be putting on an annual town and gown event. So for those of you who weren't able to be there, we missed you, and for those of you who were, we appreciated your engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That takes us to the agenda item of the consent agenda, and we only have one item on the consent agenda, so we're not going to take it off, I don't think. So we have a request from Union Block Coffee at 403 Northeast 3rd Street for a limited on-premise liquor license. Although, so I need a motion for the consent agenda.
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Been moved by Kelly and seconded by Zach. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. It's either 5-0 or 4-0. I didn't hear Remy. That takes us to our first resolution this evening. We're considering resolution 2019-62, a resolution accepting an Oregon Office of Emergency Management, OEM, State Preparedness and Incident Response Equipment Spire Grant. And so I'll turn it over to Mike to present. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As the mayor noted, introducing this agenda item, this is for the placement of a piece of equipment at the airport, 30 kilowatt emergency generator that we'll be able to use for in an emergency for powering such things as the fuel farm, runway lights, some of the hangars. The Office of Emergency Management Spire Grant is a $5 million state bond funded program that places various emergency related equipment at public owned facilities throughout the state. The state will retain ownership of the generator, and the city will be responsible for ongoing maintenance of the generator. The grant agreement does allow the state to request use of the generator if they have the need elsewhere in the state to respond to an emergency, and does allow that at the end of the useful life of the generator, they'll either take it back or sell it to us at market value. I would note that McMinnville Water and Light also applied for a Spire grant, and I understand that they'll be receiving a water filtration trailer as part of this program. So unless there are any questions, I'd recommend that the council adopt the resolution approving the grant agreement.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions of Mike from the
I was
dais?
just kind of curious. I noted there was other pieces of equipment they were showing, and are these other options for other years, or like the fueling and stuff like that? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, assuming at the state level, if they reauthorize another round of grant funds with similar bond sales, I think there are certainly other city facilities that we'd be interested in, perhaps considering emergency equipment at those facilities as well. But it sort of fit when Rich Boffer and I were looking at the program when it first came out. We knew we had that the airport is kind of designated as a regional response location, and it seemed to us that it would be an attractive award of a grant at the state level to allow us to have that piece of equipment.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Other questions? Just a comment from my perspective on Rich's report. As you take a look at under discussion, I know from a Newburgh-Dundee bypass perspective, we have really picked up on the Oregon Resilience Plan and understanding that we're a Tier 2 airport, understanding that we will provide access to those in need in case of an emergency. I think this really goes to solidifying where we are, and from that perspective, we share that message at the state and the federal level as we're out talking, and we've included that in our pamphlet. So again, and then looking at the federal staging area also is, I think, a real important designation for us. So I will ask for a motion on resolution 2019-62.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Sal and seconded by Kelly. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate. And the resolution 2019-62 passes unanimously. That takes us to resolution 2019-63, a resolution approving a lease agreement and extension with Comcast of Oregon to Incorporated. Mike, could you update us on this resolution?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This will look somewhat familiar to you. At your August 13th meeting, you adopted Resolution 2019-55, amending and extending the lease with Comcast at the airport. That version of lease amendment was for a 5-year extension period. Subsequent to your adoption of that resolution, the folks at Comcast that have been working with the city attorney asked that we revise the extension to be only a 3-year extension. That's certainly workable for us. I think as we move into the next update of the airport layout plan, it may make sense for us to reevaluate if that space that Comcast is in is better suited for aviation-related leasing. And so Mr. Kosh and I aren't sure if the fact that they're only asking for a 3-year extension means that 3 years from now they're wanting to be somewhere else, but it certainly does align well with our master plan update and allows us to have that discussion when that 3-year period is up. So that's the only change to that prior amendment you saw. It still allows for us to use 20 of the parking spaces in their parking lot for airport related use, and We do have Comcast's signature on this lease extension. You'll notice in your lease packet. We don't expect that they'll come back and ask for further changes. And we expect to immediately start to work with them on the logistics of marking those parking spaces at the airport. And that sort of starts the process for me to dealing with some tenant issues and some conflicts that I'm having out there. So unless there are any questions, I'd recommend the council adopt this resolution that amends the prior amendment that you adopted.
Okay, any questions for Mike on this issue? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been, and we're looking at resolution 2019-63. It's been moved by Zach and seconded by Adam. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 2019-63 passes unanimously. And anything else that needs to come before the council this evening? I'll tell you, this is a new record, I think, for this year.
When the mayor's at the helm.
So I'll go ahead, and hearing nothing, I will go ahead and close the council meeting.
See you, Remy.